Welcome to the debate. Imagine this. You're fast asleep in Sao Paulo, but your business is just wide awake.
Always a nice thought.
Right? While you're dreaming, an algorithm just analyzed a trending search in Tokyo, sourced a manufacturer in China, spun up localized ads.
And probably negotiated the shipping rates, too.
Exactly. It negotiates the shipping and closes 500 sales before you've even poured your morning coffee. So the question we're tackling today is, are we looking at the ultimate business utopia, like a self-sustaining, perpetual motion machine? Or is this so-called fully automated enterprise just an illusion heavily propped up by invisible human fail-safes?
It is a phenomenal image. And honestly, if you read the tech press, it sounds like an everyday reality. But the mechanics behind the curtain are, well, far more complicated.
Considerably more complicated.
Right. If you're listening right now and thinking, I use ChatGPT every day and I still have to, double check and edit everything it writes, you are hitting on exactly what we're looking at today. Is the AI actually doing the work, or is it just filling in a template that a human meticulously designed?
And that is the core intellectual disagreement we are exploring. Has artificial intelligence effectively eliminated human operational limitations? Have we created functionally autonomous, borderless enterprises that operate 24/7, or does AI merely act as an unprecedented amplifier, one that remains entirely dependent on human architecture, oversight, and intervention?
It's a huge distinction.
It really is. I will be arguing that the paradigm has permanently shifted. We are seeing the creation of genuinely autonomous global infrastructure.
And I will argue that while AI provides massive, undeniable leverage, true autonomy in the enterprise is a myth. Humans remain the essential fail-safes and the primary architects. These systems are entirely dependent on human-generated context. Calling them autonomous fundamentally obscures the reality of how global infrastructure actually functions.
Well, let me lay out why I believe we've crossed that threshold into true autonomy. For the entire history of commerce, we relied on labor-intensive business models.
Sure.
And those models inevitably crumble under scaling pressures. If you get 1,000 new customers overnight, you need to hire more support staff, you need more warehouse managers.
Your servers crash.
Exactly. Your servers crash. But AI has fundamentally changed the economics of business models like global drop shipping, SaaS, and digital products. Take e-commerce. Platforms like Shopify now integrate seamlessly with tools like Oberlo or Spocket.
Right, the sourcing tools.
Yes, but they aren't just software dashboards anymore. They use machine learning to autonomously match products with trending global demand. They pull real-time data from TikTok analytics or Google Trends, spot a rising interest in a specific product, and just connect the pipeline. They don't just assist a human worker, they replace the manual task entirely.
They are certainly processing an unimaginable volume of data, yes. But processing data is not the same as operating a business.
But it's not just data processing. It's execution. These systems are predicting stockouts and adjusting prices dynamically from global wholesalers in China or Turkey without a human ever looking at a spreadsheet.
A human still set the parameters, though.
But the system scales itself because of hyperscalers, cloud providers like AWS or Google Cloud, offering serverless computing. These tasks scale instantly. Serverless computing basically means the system automatically adds more computing power the second traffic spikes and turns it off when it drops. You could have a single user interacting with your site in Sydney at dawn and millions of users in Europe by peak hours. Behind the scenes, Lambda functions and auto-scaling groups dynamically spin up resources based on predictive algorithms. The infrastructure operates 24/7. It doesn't tire, it doesn't need a payroll, and it makes complex logistical decisions. That is a truly autonomous global infrastructure.
I see the appeal of that argument, I really do. But if you look under the hood, the no human intervention required narrative is, well, it's a dangerous mischaracterization. Let's look at the very foundation of the systems you're talking about.
Okay, let's look at it.
Even the most advanced generative models today, whether we're talking about Grok or the various GPT variants, fundamentally rely on RLHF, which stands for Reinforcement Learning from Human Feedback.
Right, during the training phase.
Exactly, the training phase. It's a system where thousands of human graders constantly evaluate the AI's outputs, telling it good job or bad job to shape its logic. They are trained, corrected, and guided by human evaluation. They execute independently, which is entirely different from operating autonomously.
That's a subtle distinction.
But a crucial one. Consider AI coding assistants like GitHub Copilot or Cursor AI. They are widely adopted because they suggest code, they speed up debugging, they eliminate repetitive typing.
They save massive amounts of time.
They do, but the companies building them explicitly state they do not replace developers. They amplify a developer's productivity so the human can focus on architecture and problem solving. The foundation of this entire global business model you described still requires an entrepreneur to select the niche, design the overarching architecture, and define the goals. A human has to identify the underserved global gap. The AI is just a very fast paintbrush. It isn't the artist.
I think that distinction between executing independently and operating autonomously is where we fundamentally disagree. Let's look at how these systems actually interact with the outside world, specifically in customer acquisition and service.
All right.
Manual marketing used to be like casting a giant net in the ocean and hoping for a catch. AI marketing is more like a heat-seeking drone. It doesn't just find the fish. It maps the currents, predicts where the fish will be tomorrow, and drops the bait exactly there. And it does this without human prompts.
A highly calibrated drone, yes, but still a tool launched by a human.
But look at the mechanism. You can use no-code platforms like Zapier to connect ad platforms directly to AI engines. These tools use reinforcement learning to test thousands of ad variations. This means the AI treats marketing like a mathematical game.
Right, A/B testing at scale.
Exactly. If a headline, translated into localized Japanese, gets a micromillisecond longer engagement than another, the AI mathematically rewards itself and instantly shifts the global ad spend to the winning variation. It autonomously iterates. And then look at the conversational AI handling the leads.
The chatbots.
Far more than chatbots now. Tools like Anthropic's Claude are resolving queries in over 100 languages. Picture a lead from Germany asking about highly technical product specs at 3 a.m. The AI pulls the specs, answers in fluent German, and uses pinecone vector databases, which essentially act as a long-term memory bank, allowing the AI to instantly recall a detail the customer mentioned 3 days ago. It maintains perfect context. Conversion rates are jumping 40% because the AI personalizes at scale autonomously.
That is a staggering capability, I'll give you that. But have you considered what happens when the conversation deviates from the statistical norm?
What do you mean?
You are describing a system that handles high volume incredibly well, but it completely breaks down when faced with genuine complexity. Let's look at the data from the very tools you're citing. AI agents like Intercom's Fin or Zendesk do indeed resolve 65 to 70% of queries instantly.
Which is a massive paradigm shift. That is 70% of a human workforce requirement just eliminated.
It is a massive reduction in routine labor, but look at the remaining 30 to 35%. The AI strictly escalates those cases to human agents.
Because it's still learning.
No, because when a customer has a complex, multi-layered problem that hasn't been mapped in that vector database you mentioned, the AI cannot reason its way out of it. It doesn't understand the problem, it only understands word proximity. So it requires a human to step in and actually think. The humans haven't been eliminated from the enterprise, they've simply been repositioned as the ultimate failsafe.
So you're saying it's just a filter?
Exactly. AI resolves the routine refund from a Singapore warehouse perfectly. But when a unique software glitch occurs that crosses over with a billing error, the human is the only one who can untangle it.
Wait, I want to make sure I understand your distinction here. You're saying that because an AI requires a safety net for 30% of edge cases, it negates the autonomy of the 70%.
Yes, because true autonomy implies self-sufficiency.
Well, you've made a fair point about digital customer service. When a chat fails, a human steps in. But does that safety net requirement hold true when we move from the digital front end to the physical back end? Let's look at logistics, where AI doesn't just talk, it acts. AI is arguably even more autonomous when dealing with the chaos of the physical world.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. The physical world is exactly where the illusion of autonomy breaks down fastest. Let's break this down systematically to really understand the mechanics at play. First, let's identify the major operational risks of AI in this context. Then, let's list practical solutions to mitigate those problems. And third, we need to discuss specifically automation failures in global supply chains. If we follow that format, the human dependency becomes blindingly obvious.
Okay, I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on the reality of the supply chain first. Look at Amazon's fulfillment centers.
The robotics.
Right. They deploy robotic swarms coordinated by AI orchestration layers that pick and pack orders 24/7 with 99.99% uptime.
Or look at global freight. DHL's Resilience 360 uses graph neural networks, which are models that map the relationships between thousands of different global nodes to dynamically reroute shipments.
Right, predicting weather patterns and port congestion. Exactly. If there is a storm hitting ports in the Philippines, the AI automatically diverts cargo to backup ports in Vietnam to minimize delays. During the recent major supply disruptions, AI dynamically rerouted shipment and saved businesses millions. It didn't escalate to a human to ask for permission. It analyzed the global risk and executed the logistical pivot autonomously. This proves it handles physical world chaos better than human teams.
You are conflating anomaly detection with autonomous problem solving. Let's go back to the format I proposed. First, identifying the major operational risks of AI. The primary risk is that AI in these scenarios functions purely as a highly advanced alarm system. It cannot manipulate the physical environment when things break.
Rerouting a massive cargo ship mid-ocean is far more than ringing an alarm bell.
It identifies an optimal alternate path on a digital map, yes. But let's look at the second step, the practical solutions to mitigate these problems. Consider predictive maintenance in manufacturing. AIs from companies like Uptake monitor factory sensors nonstop. They use LSTM networks, long short-term memory networks, which are basically algorithms that remember patterns over long periods to predict the future.
Right, to forecast equipment failures.
Exactly. They analyze time series data to forecast that a specific piece of equipment in an automotive plant will fail in 3 days. Or they use isolation forests, algorithms specifically designed to spot weird or anomalous data points, to flag a sudden supply chain snag in Shanghai.
See, exactly. They preemptively solve the problem before the human even knows it exists.
No, they preemptively flag the risk, identifying operational risks like an impending machine breakdown or a closed port is not the same as solving them. Which brings us to the third point, automation failures in global supply chains.
But the AI reroutes around the failure.
Only digitally. The practical solutions to mitigate these actual physical problems are entirely human. If the AI flags a supply chain snag in Shanghai and reroutes to Vietnam, the AI doesn't unload the ship. You still need human-built physical redundancies. You need human dock workers at the backup port. You need human maintenance crews in Detroit to actually walk onto the factory floor and replace the failing part on the automotive line before it halts production. The AI doesn't pick up a wrench. It is a brilliant predictive alarm that requires human fleets to execute the physical solution.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning, because it artificially separates the brain from the body. Yes, human hands might turn the physical wrench, but the enterprise itself, the central nervous system making the calculations and giving the orders, is autonomous.
A nervous system without a body can't do anything.
But the AI pipelines are streaming petabytes of global data, feeding it into classification models to auto-adjust stock from Chinese suppliers based on real-time U.S. consumer trends. The strategic orchestration is autonomous, even if the physical endpoints sometimes require human labor.
But the enterprise isn't just a nervous system. It is the entire organism. If the organism relies on human intervention to survive a physical anomaly, it is not an autonomous entity. It is a cyborg at best, and a heavily dependent one at that.
Then let's transition from the movement of physical goods to the actual generation of value. Because if you want to talk about the entire organism, we have to look at how businesses create new ideas, new products, and new intellectual property. AI is now independently generating value. It operates as essential, perpetual infrastructure for R&D and continuous content creation.
It produces content rapidly, yes,
But generating value requires strategic intent.
But the intent is programmed once, and the execution is perpetual. Look at the life sciences. DeepMind's AlphaFold is running 24/7, predicting the 3D structures of proteins and aiding in global drug discovery. It is continuously modeling biology while the researchers sleep.
Right, the scale is incredible.
And look at the creative economy. Mr. Beast-style digital creators are using AI to endlessly A/B test video thumbnails, iterating thousands of visual variants to maximize clicks worldwide without a human designer lifting a finger for each version. Tools like Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, and 11 Labs are generating high-quality visual and audio assets at a fraction of traditional costs.
But again, someone is prompting them.
Barely. When an Indian startup wants to target U.S. fitness enthusiasts, tools like AdCreative.ai use generative AI to autonomously create culturally attuned copy, swapping out local slang based on the region. The AI is effectively functioning as an autonomous creative agency.
I come at it from a different way. What you are describing is endless execution, absolutely. The volume of asset generation is staggering. But the strategic intelligence driving that execution remains purely human. Why do enterprise AI tools like Grammarly Go, Writer.com, and Microsoft 365 Copilot dominate the market right now?
Because they save thousands of hours and operate continuously without fatigue.
They dominate because they fit perfectly into existing human workflows. They don't invent new workflows. Writer.com is incredibly valuable to an enterprise specifically because it helps teams keep a human brand voice consistent across channels. AI is a tireless worker, but it is entirely incapable of setting its own strategic direction. It doesn't wake up and think, you know, what new market should we conquer today?
But it can identify market gaps that humans miss, and it does so mathematically.
Only when prompted by a human using the right tools. A business might use AI-powered SEO platforms like Ahrefs or SEMrush to identify underserved global gaps, like spotting a 300% surge in search volume for sustainable fashion in Southeast Asia.
Which is a massive strategic advantage.
Yes, but the AI didn't decide to investigate the Southeast Asian fashion market out of curiosity. An entrepreneur formulated the query, analyzed the AI's data retrieval, and made the strategic, high-stakes decision to pivot their business model. The AI is an instrument of human strategy.
I hear you. But I think you are underestimating how rapidly the feedback loops are closing, effectively removing that human prompter.
Closing the loops? How so?
Consider a system where Stripe's AI is autonomously detecting fraud using graph analytics. It mathematically maps the relationships between credit cards and IP addresses to block suspicious transactions from high-risk regions while approving legitimate ones from Japan.
Right, standard fraud prevention.
That simultaneously, automated workflows via Zapier are pulling that success rate data and dynamically adjusting the global marketing spend based on where the valid transactions are coming from. The loop is closed. The AI detected the fraud, optimized the revenue, and adjusted the marketing budget without anyone clicking a button.
The human initiated the business on day one, though.
Yes, but the sheer volume, speed, and continuous 24/7 execution transcend mere assistance. At that point, the enterprise practically runs on its own momentum. It bridges the gap between human hours and endless execution.
Exactly. It allows a 3-person startup in Mumbai to compete with Silicon Valley behemoths. But no human intervention remains a myth. Every time AI encounters a complex customer service issue, it escalates. Every time it predicts a supply chain failure, it requires human intervention to fix the physical reality. It fundamentally amplifies human strategy, relies on human feedback for refinement, and depends on human fail-safes for survival.
We have clearly mapped out the boundaries of this transition today. On one hand, we see your perspective AI functioning as a tireless operational amplifier, requiring a human architect to set the direction, formulate the queries, and manually mitigate the physical risks in the supply chain.
It's a foundational requirement.
But on the other hand, the continuous 24/7 execution, the mathematically closed feedback loops in marketing and finance, and the self-optimizing logistical networks suggest the modern enterprise is becoming an entity that transcends traditional human limitations.
It is an evolving symbiosis. The machine executes the immense scale, but the human provides the context, the meaning, and the ultimate safety net.
Indeed, the reality likely sits somewhere within that evolving symbiosis between human strategy and machine execution. There is much more nuance to explore in the source material regarding how these specific models and infrastructures are reshaping global commerce. Thank you for joining us today. As you consider what we've discussed, think back to that entrepreneur in Sao Paulo, waking up to a stream of new revenue generated in Tokyo overnight. The enterprise may have executed flawlessly while they slept, but we have to ask, who's really dreaming up the future of the business? The algorithm running the code or the person holding the coffee?